Hi everyone, Stepan here. It's Thursday, so I'm going to continue the series on Mikhail Tal. He was 13 still during this game. This was played in his Riga Youth Championship in 1949. As he says in Life and Games of Mikhail Tal, his first serious tournament. And he had a 4th category rating at the time, which is low. In Croatia at 1700. Alright, so in this game, he faced Yanis Klavins, who was older and stronger officially, and it was a Rubinstein French. Now after e4, e6, d4, d5, the Rubinstein French could be reached two different ways, via knight c3 on move 3 or knight d2, the Tarrasch. I played the Tarrasch with white, so I usually face it from here, and the Rubinstein is d4, knight e4. Now you can see that it's the same thing whether the knight captures from d2 or c3, doesn't really matter. The difference is that with this move order with knight d2, you are avoiding the winner French, which is bishop to b4 on move 3. So that's the reason why people choose the Tarrasch sometimes over knight c3. Okay, but knight c3 played in this one, and now of course Tal has the option to go for the winner French, which is, I would say, the most complicated, most theory heavy, and has the sharpest lines like the poison pawn and some very insane variations occur from the Rubinstein. Then the classical is probably the most principled way and most French-like way to play e5, knight d7, and then, excuse me, black goes for c5. And the third option, of course, which Tal chose in this game, is going into the Rubinstein. Now, after knight takes e4, there are a couple of ways to play this position out. You could play knight f6, immediately offering a trade. You could play knight d7, preparing knight gf6 to make sure you still have a knight on f6. Or you could play bishop d7, the normal Rubinstein way, just getting your bishop to c6 immediately. The idea behind the Rubinstein, by the way, is not to have a bad French defense bishop. So by playing bishop d7 eventually and placing it on c6, your bishop is actually good. The downside is that you're not breaking the center with c5, but there's not as much need for that when your bishop is outside and you don't need that many pawn breaks. In the game, Tal played knight f6. Now, of course, the main move is knight f6 and queen f6. And here I'd like to show you how I won one game. You could make a mistake here with black. So I was playing white in this position, and my opponent played bishop d7, going for the normal Rubinstein plan. If you're playing white against the Rubinstein, just learn how to punish this. If you play the Rubinstein and you play knight f6, then be aware of this. So the queen is misplaced. Knight f3 prepares bishop g5. So after bishop g5, your queen doesn't have any good squares. You could go to g6 or to f5. f5 is worse than g6. Whichever is played, let's say queen g6, then bishop d3, another tempo on the queen. And once the queen gets to h5, white simply plays h3. And now if you don't do anything, my next move is going to be g4. I won one game like this against the 1700 in a tournament in Zagreb. I believe it was 2018. You can find the game on the channel. It finished pretty quickly. So the only move you could play here is f6, saving your queen, bishop d2, or you could also play bishop f4, but I believe bishop d2 is best. And now black continues with knight c6, but his pawn structure is wrecked. His king will have no safety, and yeah, it's just a bad position. So after knight f3, black plays h6, stopping that. But in the game, after Tal played knight f6, Mr. Klavins didn't take. He played bishop to d3, which is a less ambitious continuation and simply allows black to avoid his queen being dragged out to the king side too early. You don't really want your queen here, obviously. Okay, yeah, by the way, queen takes pawn just loses straight away to bishop b5 check, winning the queen, so that would be a blunder. Okay, so knight takes e4, bishop takes e4, and now a great move from Tal. Very principled, breaking the center straight away with c5, leaving himself the option of playing bishop b4 check if the pawns get traded off. Still, bishop b4 check wouldn't be as good because white would have the c3 idea, just blocking the bishop. But after white plays c3 to defend his central pawn, now it all works. Now you have bishop b4 with tempo because the c3 pawn is going to be gone after the exchange, and black simply has a better position, positionally speaking, because he can provoke an isolated queen's pawn for not much. Obviously the IQP is okay, it's not bad, or it's good and bad at the same time, depending on how you play the position. But with all of your pieces undeveloped, it's not a good thing. If you have an IQP, then you want your pieces on very strong attacking squares, and you want to be putting pressure on your opponent. Granted, black hasn't developed either, but he still has a positional edge after CD4. Of course, if you delay the isolation of your pawn with queen takes, then I just trade the queens off and have a clear positional advantage, which you cannot compensate for with any attack because you don't have a queen. But after CD4 was played, and now a clear tempo bishop b4 check. And of course, black is already better. Now, I haven't analyzed the game with an engine. I will run an engine analysis at the end of the video as always. But here, I'm going to say it's minus 0.5 or something like that. Obviously, black has better development and better king and better everything. So the principled move is bishop d2, and after takes, white still has to develop his knight to castle. Black has already castled. He could start putting pressure on this pawn straight away. Not with knight c6, because bishop takes c6, that wouldn't be positionally sound, but probably blockading it first, knight d7, knight f6, knight d5, or knight b6, knight d5. The Nimzovich way of playing, principled, positional, don't attack the pawn straight away, but blockade it instead. You can win it later on, and black is slightly better. Instead of that, white played a really strange move. He played king f1. Now, what I think he wants to do, which is not bad, but it's very hard to do, in fact, is g3, king g2, in which case his king would be perfectly safe. He would still keep the option he would still keep the two bishops on the board, which is, of course, necessary when you have an IQP, but it's just too slow. And the thing that kept popping up in my analysis was the move e5, to meet g3 with bishop h3 check. Now, obviously, if white doesn't develop the knight, then he is playing without two pieces. So I assume that white develops the knight. At some point, you play e5 after g3 and then bishop h3. So I think the key thing here is after g3 not to allow king to g2. Okay, king f1, very, very strange move. I'm sure bishop d2 was better, but white wanted to avoid trades. And now knight c6. Taking could be good. Sort of creating a weakness on c6, but since he played king f1, he's probably not going to trade off his bishop now, just to isolate the two pawns. So he plays knight f3. And now, okay, here's an interesting point. I spent a bit of time calculating Greek gift sacrifices. So obviously you have a perfect setup for the Greek gift. And I've had positions like this in my game, in one Sicilian game, in a tournament, and in one Caro-Kann game. So obviously you have to be afraid of that. So whenever white has these four pieces, bishop on the c1 h6 diagonal, bishop on the h7 b1 diagonal, queen on the original square, and the knight on f3, and you don't have a knight on f6, then Greek gifts could work. Here's why they don't work here. So if black castles, which didn't happen, and bishop takes h7 is played, you can take. Fine, knight g5, normal Greek gift continuation, king g6, fine, queen g4, normal Greek gift threat of playing knight takes e6 check, winning your queen. Doesn't work here because you play f5. And in this position, if the queen retreats with, let's say, queen to g3, you can just play king f6 and you're a piece ahead. And if, for example, yeah, by the way, yeah, and this is clearly winning. And after queen to g4, there's another way to play this. You could just play queen takes d4, and now if knight e6 check, you can just take or move your king because everything is defended. Wait. No, I'm being stupid. Jesus. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, no, we just take. Sorry, knight e6 is not possible. Okay, I had a blackout for a moment. Okay, so after queen d4, knight e6 just doesn't work. You take the queen. For some reason, I was looking at a double check, but the knight is not checking the king. So bishop h7 wouldn't work here. Tal could have castled. So after castles, assuming white doesn't blunder with bishop h7, he should continue with his normal plan of g3, king to g2. Unfortunately, this doesn't work. Why? Because you can play e5, and this is absolutely crushing. So if you play king g2, I just win a pawn. For example, king g2, pawn takes d4. You could also play knight takes d4 and give a pawn back, but there's no need for that. And if after e5 d5 is played, which I assume is the best move, then I insert bishop h3 check, and that's the point. You cannot get your king to safety because I have this e5 break. So king to g1 probably is the most sensible move, and now we continue with f5, and this is crushing. So you cannot take my knight. d5 wasn't attacking my knight because your queen is on pre. So I don't know, bishop c2, for example, knight d4, knight takes, pawn takes. If you play queen takes d4, then just continue rook c8 and everything is hanging. You don't take my bishop because you lose. Yeah, one thing I should point out, after you take my bishop, I just take your bishop back. I don't threaten mate with queen to d5, that would be a blunder, and hopefully you can see why. Bishop b3 would be terribly embarrassing, just winning for white. So after knight f3, castles was a very good move, and there's another idea after castles g3. You could start with f5. This was a theme in my analysis. The idea is to chase the bishop away. You have a lot of control over e5. You're making d5 very hard to play. You're defending h7 forever, and after something like bishop c2, you could probably just continue with bishop to d6 or bishop e7, and then threaten to slowly undermine this pawn structure and get to the white king. But Tal played queen c7, which I don't know what to say about this move because I have no idea what it does. I was trying to figure it out, I just cannot. I think it's an eventual tempo gain after white plays rook c1. It's preventing bishop f4, but I don't think white wants to play bishop f4 anyway. So if black, for example, castled instead of queen c7 and bishop f4, I don't know, I just play f5 and probably take on c6 or bishop c2. I don't think this is problematic at all. But queen c7. And now finally g3 played, and now obviously you don't have bishop h3. So yeah, in this position again, f5 or castles was possible and very good. I think after castles again, this doesn't work. You have to look at the Greek gift at all points, but it just doesn't work. You don't have queen d4 now, but you have f5. And if knight takes, then you take the queen. So f takes g4, knight takes c7. And now here's a fun variation, which I analyzed. It's not forced. There were better moves for black, surely, because it didn't use an engine, but it's still crushing. I just give up my rook with knight takes d4, and white can resign. So let's say you take my rook. I just go knight c2. More importantly than attacking your rook, controlling some exit squares, and of course everything is going to be covered after I play something like rook e1. So for example, rook to b1 after I play rook e8, rook to b1 saving your rook, and now bishop f5 attacking your rook, knight to c7 for example. Let's say white tries to be greedy, just saving material, then bishop d3 check, everything is covered, king to g2, and now knight e1 check, and you're losing both rooks. It's as simple as that. So for example, rook takes e1, bishop takes e1, rook a1, and rook takes f2, and eventually you just resign. This is just too much. Of course, for the moment, black is just the exchange up, but not even an exchange up. Okay, I'm sorry, but just white is undeveloped and lost. Okay, but after g3, Tal didn't play f5 or castles. He played bishop d7, which is a normal Rubinstein plan. It's not as strong though. a3 played, chasing the bishop away, bishop d6, b4 played, and here, I don't know, I think the position is equal. I don't see any issues for white anymore. Of course b4 is imprecise. He should have continued with king to g2, just preventing bishop h3 forever. And let's say black castles and something like bishop e3 and f5, bishop c2. I think black is slightly better, but I don't think it's terrible now that the king came to g2. Instead b4 played, and now Tal does strike. Now he plays e5. Whether that's good or not, I'm not sure in this position, because king g2 just prevents bishop h3. And I'm not sure what this move was about if you don't play bishop h3. So, for example, here, if bishop g4 is played, then simply bishop to b2. And this seems very annoying. If you trade everything off, I don't know. I think I'm just better here as white. I mean, your king is still in the center. Everything seems to be hanging. You don't have bishop e5. Oh, you have bishop e5, excuse me. Or do you? Bishop e5, no, you don't. I could play rook a to e1, excuse me. Okay, so tactics work. So king to g2 was just a much better move, and that's why white played g3. He needs to get his king to safety, and probably white is slightly better there. Instead, white played a dreadful move. He played d takes c5. Now this is unbelievable. D takes c5 opens up lines, allows bishop h3, and does nothing for white's king safety, does nothing for white's development. So you could start with bishop h3. That's okay, that's a tempo. Tal plays bishop e5, attacking the rook, that's another tempo. And rook a2 played, and now bishop h3, king to g1, and rook to d8. And now all of a sudden, black has all his pieces on great attacking squares. White is obviously playing a rook down. Black is about to castle and probably be much better. Obviously, it's not that lost if an engine is playing. I don't know what the engine is going to say. I wouldn't say it's more than -1 or -2. But it's much better for black. And white just, I think, made the final blunder of the game. So obviously here you want to play rook d2. Rook d2 just trades rooks, which you want to do as white. So rook d2, bishop d2, my bishop is developed. I mean, I would like to play knight g5 and bishop g2. If I'm not able to do that, I'm going to play knight e1 and bishop g2, and once I get rid of your bishop, I'm going to survive. It's not like you're mating me yet, so you still have to castle. Instead, white played queen e2. Queen e2 loses, and here's why. You just play knight d4, and after knight d4, I'm attacking your knight, I'm attacking your queen. You have to take it. Once you take it, I just play queen takes c1. Or excuse me, you don't have to take it. You could take it, but then you lose to a mate in 2. So after knight d4, if you take my knight, then I just take your bishop and checkmate you. So I assume you should retreat the queen. So for example, queen e1, but queen e1 loses all the same. You just continue with either castles or f5. f5 wins a piece straight away, so f5. Okay, and after f5, the bishop goes somewhere. Let's say bishop to b1. After bishop to b1, I just take, win your queen, or mate you, excuse me, so that wouldn't work. If you keep the bishop on diagonal, I don't know what else to suggest. Maybe bishop e3 attacking my knight, but I just play f takes e4. And again, you just lose knight takes d4, bishop takes d4, bishop takes d4, rook takes d4. This issue of a back rank mate is absolutely crushing. But in the game after queen e2, knight d4, Yanis Klavins actually took the knight and resigned after queen takes. So, to be fair, he didn't lose the game until move 17, and the game was 18 moves long. The biggest and final blunder was queen e2. It just allows knight d4, and he didn't see that he cannot retreat the queen or take the knight. Okay, so let's run a brief engine analysis. Let me just add the analysis bar to the right side. Okay, nice. So let's see. I would like to start in this position after g3. No, actually, let's start after knight f3. So after knight f3, queen c7 was played. Let's see what the engine thinks about that. It already thinks white is better, even though black was better because of king f1. So the engine does want to castle, and it's not afraid of bishop h7, I assume. Yeah, okay, bishop h7 just doesn't work. It plays king g1 for white, which I'd be really reluctant to play. I would play g3. Now it wants to go bishop e7, but e5 is a good move. e5 is a good move. So if d5... Yeah, if d5, bishop h3. Okay, but queen c7 played, and now g3, which I think is good, and now bishop d7. Bishop d7 and white is better. Okay, so f5 could have been played, castles was also good. Those were the moves I analyzed. Bishop d6 is best. I don't know why, and white is still slightly better. But apparently bishop d6 was the best move. Maybe there is some tactical reason. Okay, probably the engine just wants to play f5 all the time, and that's why it wants to go bishop d6. Okay, but bishop d7 is not dreadful. It's not +1 yet. A3 played, bishop d6 helping black get his bishop to the square he wants it on. And now b4, imprecise, king g2 was correct, as I thought, just bringing the king to safety. And now e5. Whoa, e5 was a mistake here. Let's see why. So I was looking at king g2, stopping bishop h3, and I thought white should be better. And that's true. And bishop g4, okay, and bishop d2, everything correct. And now it doesn't want to take on d4, it wants to castle. Yeah, and white should be better. And eventually, as I said, queen c7 is going to be a tempo gain for rook c1. Okay, but after e5, black didn't play king g2, he took on e5. And yeah, now the situation just... the tables are just turned. Bishop e5 correct. Rook b1 was better, but rook a2 I guess defends laterally. And now bishop h3 check, king g1, rook d8, everything perfect from Tal. And now, yeah, rook d2. Rook d2, minus 0.3, the position is equal. Why wouldn't you trade rooks in this position? Why would you weaken your back rank and get mated? So that's why rook b1 was much better than rook a2. But still, it's just dreadful. Okay, queen e2, yeah, -5. Okay, and after knight d4, okay, yeah, queen e1 was the best move. He took on d4 and lost, but after queen e1, f5, okay, on bishop takes, you could take the knight or the bishop. I guess pawn takes bishop is better, threatening the knight and threatening mate. So yeah, just, I mean, a horrible blunder. Just learn from this game. If you are tactically weaker and if your king is weaker, trade the pieces off. Queen e2 declines piece trades. Why would you want to decline piece trades here? So black was obviously a stronger player by rating. White, excuse me, and he just wanted to keep the pieces on the board and checkmate, and then got checkmated. So don't be arrogant when playing, even if you're playing a lower rated opponent. Just trade if you're worse tactically. I think this is a huge lesson for tournament players who often get paired down in tournaments. Okay, thank you for watching. I hope you like this game. It's only 18 moves, but many Tal games at the start of this series are going to be very short and in mate like this one. Okay, thank you for watching. Let me know what you think and stay tuned for more chess. Bye bye.